The Night the Mask Slipped, a fictional account of truth and reckoning. Donald Trump has demeaned women on television for over 40 years. He's mocked them, belittled them, grabbed them without consent, and bragged about it. But on one crisp October night in Manhattan, a black woman from Dallas stepped onto the Fox News stage and made him do something he'd never done before in his entire public life. He didn't pivot, didn't deflect, didn't claim victory while losing. Instead, he ripped the microphone off his lapel and fled the stage while the cameras were still rolling, with millions of Americans watching. His own sons chased after him like handlers trying to wrangle a spooked horse. By the time the broadcast cut to an emergency commercial break, 6 veterans had already walked out of the studio in quiet protest. 14 women in the audience were visibly crying, wiping their eyes with tissues handed by neighbors. And one phrase was burning its way across every social media platform on earth. "Hey, she read him for filth." But here's the thing nobody expected. It wasn't the documents that broke him. It wasn't the court records, the testimony, or the exposed lies. It was what he almost said. The word that hung in the air unsaid but heard by everyone. The word that proved, once and for all, who Donald Trump really is when the mask finally slips. She just stood there, waiting, daring him to finish his sentence. He couldn't. The setup, a perfect trap, or so they thought. The setup had been perfect, or so Trump's team believed. When Fox News announced the special primetime event, Leadership in America, a conversation with President Trump and Congresswoman Crockett, the campaign celebrated like they'd already won the night. Home turf, friendly moderators, and an audience pre-screened for maximum MAGA energy. What could possibly go wrong? "She's a public defender from Dallas," Trump told his inner circle in the green room, 40 minutes before airtime. He was adjusting his tie, red as always, hanging past his belt buckle like a declaration of war against good taste. "I've eaten better lawyers than her for breakfast. She probably got into law school on affirmative action. This is going to be beautiful." Eric Trump nodded with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever promised a treat. 10 minutes, Dad. Maybe 15. She won't know what hit her. The ratings are going to be incredible. Trump examined himself in the mirror, satisfied with what he saw. "People love watching me win." 4 floors below, in a smaller preparation room that smelled of stale coffee and determination, Jasmine Crockett was arranging 7 folders on the table in front of her. Each one was color-coded. Each one was thick with documents. Each one represented a different way to dismantle a man's political career on live television. Her chief of staff, Marcus Chen, watched with growing unease. "You know he's going to come after you personally, the low IQ stuff, the racial dog whistles. He always does it with black women." "I know," Crockett said, not looking up from her papers. "And you're okay with that?" Now she looked up, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step backward. Not anger, something colder, more patient. The look of a chess player who has already seen the checkmate 12 moves ahead. "Marcus, I spent 6 years as a public defender in Dallas County. I've had judges scream at me until their faces turned purple. I've had prosecutors try to break me with tricks that would make these Fox News people blush. I've had clients, actual murderers, threaten my life because they didn't like my advice." She closed the final folder with a soft, definitive click. "Donald Trump calling me names on television is not going to ruin my day. But what I have in these folders," she smiled, and it was not a kind smile, "that's going to ruin his." Marcus swallowed. "How many of those are you planning to use?" Crockett picked up 6 of the folders, leaving one on the table. "If I need the 7th, something has gone very wrong." At 8:58 p.m. Eastern, both participants took their positions. The Fox News studio gleamed under lights hot enough to make anyone sweat, though only one of them would be sweating by the end of the night. The live audience of 250 settled into their seats. MAGA hats here, worried independents there, a scattering of veterans in the back wearing their service organization caps. Bret Baier stood at center stage, projecting calm authority. He moderated dozens of these events. He could handle anything. He had no idea. 30 seconds, a producer called. Trump rolled his shoulders like a boxer entering the ring. This was his element: television, performance, domination. Crockett stood perfectly still at her podium, hands folded over her folders, her expression pleasant and completely unreadable. The red lights blinked to life, and America watched as a woman with folders walked calmly into a lion's den and made the lion run away crying. The opening salvo, intelligence and credentials under fire. Bret Baier barely finished his introduction before Trump seized control. He'd done this 1,000 times. Establish dominance early, never let the opponent find their footing. "Let me just say something before we start," Trump interrupted, waving his hand at Crockett with casual dismissiveness. I've seen this woman on television. I've watched her little speeches in Congress, and I have to be honest with the American people. Not impressed. Not impressed at all. He turned to the audience, playing to his bass. I mean, look, I have one of the highest IQs ever recorded. Everyone knows this. I went to Wharton, the best business school in the world. I built a $10 billion empire with my brain. He pointed at Crockett. And her? She's a public defender from Texas. Very low IQ, very low. Probably got into law school on affirmative action, to be honest. That's how it works with the Democrats. They don't care about qualifications. They just check boxes. The MAGA section applauded enthusiastically. Trump grinned, feeding off the energy. Crockett waited. She let the applause die completely. Let the silence stretch just long enough to become uncomfortable. Then she spoke, her voice calm, almost friendly. Affirmative action. That's an interesting accusation, Mr. President. Let's talk about how we both got into school. Trump's grin flickered for just a moment. You went to Wharton, Crockett continued. Very prestigious. The best, as you say. I went to the University of Houston. Less impressive on paper, I'll admit. She tilted her head slightly. But here's what's interesting. I can tell you my GPA. I can tell you my LSAT score. I can tell you my class rank at law school. I passed the Texas bar exam on my first attempt. All of these are matters of public record because I've never threatened to sue anyone for releasing them. She paused. Can you say the same? Trump shifted at his podium. My records are perfect, the best. Everyone at Wharton knew I was special. Actually, Crockett interrupted gently, one of your professors remembered you quite well, Dr. William T. Kelly taught at Wharton during your time there. He spoke about you after his retirement. She pulled a document from her first folder. Would you like to know what he said? Trump's face was already tightening. That's probably fake. Donald Trump was the dumbest goddamn student I ever had. End quote. That's from a professor at the best business school in the world talking about you. Gasps from parts of the audience. Nervous laughter from others. But maybe he was wrong, Crockett continued. Maybe you were actually brilliant and he just couldn't see it. There's an easy way to prove that. Release your transcripts. She held up her phone. I'll call the University of Houston right now and authorize them to release my complete academic record tonight on live television. You do the same with Wharton. She smiled. Unless there's a reason you've threatened to sue every school you ever attended if they release your grades. Trump's response was immediate and loud. I don't have to prove anything to you. My success speaks for itself. I'm a billionaire. What are you? I'm a woman who took her own tests, Crockett said quietly. Can you say the same? Dead silence. In 2009, your niece Mary Trump alleged that you paid someone to take the SAT for you. You threatened to sue her for defamation, but you never actually filed the suit, did you? You never went to court. You never proved her wrong under oath. She closed the folder. You call me affirmative action. You call me low IQ, but I've never been afraid to show my grades. I've never threatened to sue a school into silence. And I've never had a professor call me the dumbest student they ever taught. She looked directly at Trump. So, when you're done questioning my intelligence, Mr. President, maybe we can talk about yours. Or would you prefer to move on to something else you'd rather not discuss? Trump was gripping his podium hard enough to leave marks. This is ridiculous. This has nothing to do with the issues. This is a personal attack. You called me low IQ and affirmative action in your opening statement, Crockett reminded him. I'm simply responding with facts. If facts feel like a personal attack, perhaps that says something about your record. Scattered laughter from the non-MAGA section. Trump looked at Bayer, expecting him to intervene and restore order. Bayer's expression was carefully neutral. Shall we move on to the next topic? Bayer asked. Yes, Trump said quickly. Let's talk about the economy. Something I actually know about. Actually, Crockett interrupted, picking up her second folder. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you know about business. Trump's brief relief evaporated like morning frost. The business empire, built on broken promises. After all, she continued, you just told everyone you're a genius businessman. You build a $10 billion empire. Let's examine how you built it. She smiled again, that not kind smile. Let's start with the people you destroyed along the way. Trump tried to regain his footing. The economy was supposed to be safe ground, his territory. I've created hundreds of thousands of jobs, he declared, volume rising to campaign rally levels. Hundreds of thousands. I've built buildings all over the world. Hotels, casinos, golf courses. The Trump name is synonymous with success. Everyone knows that. He jabbed a finger at Crockett. What have you ever built? You're a lawyer. You sue people. You've never created a single job in your life. You've never met a payroll. You don't know anything about business. Crockett nodded thoughtfully. You're right. I've never built a business. I've also never bankrupted 6 of them. The audience stirred. I've never left 60,000 workers without jobs because I couldn't manage a casino, which, by the way, is a business with a house always wins. You somehow managed to lose. Trump's face was crimson. Those bankruptcies were strategic. Every smart businessman uses bankruptcy laws. It's part of the game. A game, Crockett repeated. Is that what it was to Edward V. Jr.? She pulled a photograph from her folder, showing it to the camera, an older man in work clothes standing in front of a small shop. Edward V.'s family had been making cabinets in New Jersey for 3 generations, 60 years. His father and grandfather built that business from nothing. They hired local workers. They paid their bills on time. They did honest work. She set down the photograph. In 1989, your company hired them to build the bases for slot machines at Trump Taj Mahal. The bill was $183,600. They delivered on time. They did excellent work. I don't remember every contractor Trump started. You paid them $30,000. Then you told them to take it or leave it. When they protested, you said, and this is from their lawyers' records, sue me. We have more lawyers than you. She paused. They did sue. They won. But the legal fees bankrupted them anyway. 3 generations of American craftsmanship destroyed because you decided their work was worth 60 cents on the dollar. Trump was shaking his head. That's one example. 1 out of thousands of contractors. Would you like more examples? Crockett pulled out a thicker stack of papers. The paint company owed $140,000. The carpet company stiffed for $190,000. The architectural firm that spent 2 years fighting for $114,000. The plumbing contractors, the electrical contractors, the landscaping companies. She held up the stack. I have 217 documented cases of contractors you refused to pay. 217 American small businesses that did work for you and got cheated. Those are all lies, distortions. These are court records, Mr. President. Lawsuits, settlements, judgments. Would you like me to read the case numbers? A voice from the audience cut through the tension, older, male, tired. I'd like to say something. Bayer hesitated, then gestured for the man to stand. He was perhaps 65, wearing a worn flannel shirt and work boots. My name's Mike Callahan. I was an electrician at the Taj Mahal, 30 years in the trade. My crew worked 16-hour days to get that place ready on time. We hit every deadline. He paused. His voice was steady, but there was old pain underneath. Your people paid us 40 cents on the dollar. Said it was that or nothing. I had to let 4 guys go. One of them was my brother-in-law. He lost his house. His marriage didn't survive. He looked directly at Trump. Did your bankruptcy feel strategic to him? Trump opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Crockett let the silence hang for 3 long seconds before speaking. Mr. President, you say you've created jobs. Let me tell you what you've actually created. 1,700 lawsuits from people you refused to pay. 60,000 workers who lost their jobs when your casinos collapsed. Hundreds of small businesses destroyed because you decided their work wasn't worth honoring. She closed the folder. That's not business. That's theft with better lawyers. Trump finally found his voice. It was defensive, almost pleading. I've changed. That was years ago. My business is now. Your businesses now still use undocumented workers, Crockett said. But we'll get to that in a minute. She reached for the 3rd folder. First, let's talk about who else you cheated. Let's talk about the people who mowed your lawns and made your beds. Let's talk about the border. Hypocrisy at the border. Walls and workers. Trump seized on the topic like a drowning man grabbing driftwood. The border immigration, this was his signature issue, his safe space. Nobody has been tougher on illegal immigration than me, he declared, some of his confidence returning. Nobody. I built the wall. I protected American workers. I stopped the invasion. He pointed at Crockett. She and her Democrat friends want open borders. They want criminals pouring in, MS-13, drug dealers, rapists. They don't care about American workers. He turned to the audience. I care. I've always cared. That's why I was the toughest president ever on illegal immigration. Crockett waited for him to finish. The toughest ever, she repeated. Interesting. Let me ask you something, Mr. President. She pulled out a document with a photograph attached. 2 women, Hispanic, in cleaning uniforms. You built a wall. You gave speeches about illegal immigration. You called immigrants rapists and criminals. But who built your walls? Who mowed your lawns? Who cleaned your toilets? Trump's expression flickered. Something like recognition. Something like fear. These are Victorina Morales and Sandra Diaz. For years, they worked at your Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey. They made your beds. They cleaned your rooms. They served your guests. She looked at Trump. Do you recognize them? I don't know every employee. They were undocumented, Mr. President. And your organization knew it. According to their testimony, your managers helped them obtain fake documents, helped them get fraudulent Social Security cards, paid them below minimum wage because they couldn't complain. She pulled out more documents. This wasn't just two women. This was a pattern. Multiple Trump properties, years and years of employing undocumented workers while you stood at rallies calling immigrants criminals. The irony hung in the air like smoke. You would give a speech about the invasion at the southern border. Then you'd go home to a bed made by an undocumented immigrant. You'd eat food prepared by undocumented hands. You'd walk on grass mowed by people who couldn't report your labor violations because you had them trapped. Trump's voice rose. We didn't know. When we found out, we took immediate action. You found out when the New York Times found out, Crockett corrected, in 2018. After years these women had been working for you since 2013. And your immediate action was to fire them. No severance. No acknowledgement, just gone. She leaned forward. You want to know what happened to Victorina Morales after you fired her? She was terrified. Terrified that she'd be deported. Terrified that coming forward to expose your hypocrisy would destroy her life. But she did it anyway because she wanted Americans to know the truth. The truth. That you spent years screaming about illegal immigration while profiting from it. You called immigrants rapists while they were upstairs making your bed. You demanded a wall while your managers were helping people sneak around it. She shook her head slowly. You want to build a wall to keep out immigrants? Maybe start with your own golf courses. Or is it only illegal when you're not making money from it? Trump was sputtering. This is taken out of context. I'm the most pro-worker. You're the most pro-exploitation president in modern history, Crockett cut in. But don't worry, we're about to talk about something even worse. She reached for the fourth folder. This one was thicker than the others. You exploit workers. You stiff contractors. But at least you're generous in other ways, right? You talk about your charity work all the time, all those donations, all those good deeds. Her smile had no warmth in it whatsoever. Let's talk about the Trump Foundation. Charity as a facade, misused funds and broken trust. Trump tried to pivot again. Charity was supposed to be safe, unassailable. Who attacks a man's charitable giving? I've given more to charity than almost anyone, he said, summoning what remained of his confidence. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Veterans groups, children's hospitals, so many good causes. He gestured at Crockett. What has she ever given? Democrats just take. They take from hardworking Americans and give to people who don't deserve it. I give. I've always given. Crockett was already pulling out a document with an official seal, the seal of the New York Attorney General. Hundreds of millions to charity, she repeated. That is impressive. Let me just check something. She scanned the document with theatrical care. Oh no. Trump's confidence evaporated. This is from the New York Attorney General's office, December 2018. The Trump Foundation, your personal charitable foundation, was ordered to dissolve. Not asked, ordered by a court of law. She looked up. Do you know why? That was political persecution. The Attorney General was a Democrat. The court found, and I'm quoting from the judgment, a shocking pattern of illegality. Shocking. That's the word a judge used about your charity. She pulled out itemized lists. Let me tell you what your charity money actually bought. $10,000 for a 6-foot-tall portrait of yourself, which hung in one of your golf clubs. $25,000 in illegal political donations to Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi at the exact moment her office was deciding whether to investigate Trump University. That was a clerical error. $258,000 to settle legal disputes for your businesses, not charity, your businesses. You used cancer kids' money to pay your corporate legal bills. She set down the papers. And that's why you're banned from running a charity in New York State. Banned. Like a shoplifter banned from a store, except you didn't steal candy. You stole from children with cancer. An older woman in the audience stood up. She was small, maybe 70, wearing a simple blouse and glasses. I donated to the Trump Foundation, she said. Her voice shook, but she kept going. I'm a breast cancer survivor, 15 years. I sent a check because I thought it was going to help kids like I used to be. Kids going through chemo. Kids who were scared. Tears were running down her cheeks now. Where did my money go? Trump started to respond. Ma'am, I'm sure your generous donation. It went to a painting, Crockett said quietly. A 6-foot painting of him. That's where it went. The woman sat down heavily. The people around her reached out, touched her shoulders, offered tissues. Crockett turned back to Trump. You're banned from running a charity because you stole from sick children. You used foundation money to buy a portrait of yourself while cancer kids were losing their hair from chemotherapy. And you stand here questioning my generosity. She closed the folder. But I'm sure you make up for it in other ways. I'm sure you treat people well in your personal life. I'm sure you respect the people around you. She paused. Especially women. You respect women, don't you, Mr. President? Respect for women, a history of disrespect. Something changed in the room, a shift in attention, in anticipation. You've talked about how much you respect women, how much they love you, how you promoted more women than anyone. She picked up the 5th folder. It was thick, very thick. Let's see if that's true. Trump seemed almost relieved at first. This was familiar territory. He hit his talking points. Nobody respects women more than me, he declared. Nobody. I promoted more women to executive positions than any other real estate developer. My daughter is one of the most successful women in America. Women love me. They love me. He smirked at Crockett. I think some of the women who attack me are just jealous. Frankly, that's usually what it is. Jealousy. Crockett's expression didn't change. Women love you, she repeated. Let's ask some of them. She pulled out a document. Actually, let's start with what you've said about women just so we have a baseline for what respect means to you. She began reading. Her voice was flat, clinical, the voice of a prosecutor entering evidence. 2005, Access Hollywood. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the... She looked at Trump. Should I say the word, Mr. President? The word you used? That was locker room talk years ago. 2015, about Carly Fiorina. Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? 2016, about Megyn Kelly. You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes. Blood coming out of her wherever. 2006, about your own daughter. If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. She set down the paper. That's what respect sounds like to you. Now, let's talk about what respect looks like. Another document, another list. 26 women have publicly accused you of sexual misconduct. 26. These aren't political activists. They're not Democrats trying to destroy you. They're women reporters, contestants in your pageants, employees, strangers who say you touched them without consent. Trump was shaking his head violently. They're all liars. Every one of them. Looking for money and attention. Jean Carl wasn't looking for money, Crockett said. She didn't want anything from you except an apology. She came forward with her story that you assaulted her in a department store dressing room in the 1990s. And you called her a liar over and over. You said she wasn't your type. You said you never even met her. She held up a photograph Trump and Carl together at an event, smiling. So a jury was assembled. Not Democrats, not political operatives, American citizens selected at random who listened to the evidence. And they found you liable for sexual abuse. That verdict was unanimous. They ordered you to pay $5 million. And what did you do? You kept attacking her, kept calling her a liar. So she sued you again. And this time, another jury ordered you to pay $83.3 million. She let the numbers sit in the air. $83.3 million. That's what defamation costs when you can't stop attacking the woman you already abused. A voice rose from the audience, strong despite its tremor. An older woman standing. My name is Patricia Fielding. I'm 73 years old. I voted Republican since Nixon. I voted for you twice, Mr. President. Trump's expression softened into campaign mode. Thank you, Patricia. We appreciate your support. I'm not finished. The steel in her voice made Trump blink. I have 3 granddaughters. The oldest is 16. She's smart. She's beautiful. She's going to do great things in this world. And she asks me questions. Patricia's voice cracked, but she kept going. She asks me why I voted for a man who brags about grabbing women, who says he walks in on teenage girls while they're changing at his own beauty pageants, who calls women dogs and pigs and horseface. Tears were streaming down her face now. She asks me, Grandma, how can you vote for someone who does that? Does that mean it's okay? Does that mean if a boy treats me like that, I should just accept it? The audience was utterly silent. I didn't have an answer. I told myself it was about the economy, about the Supreme Court, about policy. I told myself that character didn't matter as much as results. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was lying to her. To myself. Because I didn't want to admit what I had supported, who I'd supported. She looked at Trump. You have a granddaughter too. She's probably about my granddaughter's age. Would you want any man to speak about her the way you've spoken about women? Would you want any man to touch her the way those women say you touched them? Trump opened his mouth. For once, nothing came out. That's what I thought, Patricia said. She sat down heavily, and the woman next to her immediately wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Crockett waited for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than it had been all night. $83.3 million. That's what a jury of American citizens, not Democrats, not the deep state, just Americans decided you owe Jean Carroll. And you're still calling her a liar. You still can't stop. She looked at Trump. You don't respect women, Mr. President. You collect them, you rate them, you use them, and when they say no, you destroy them. She closed the folder. But Patricia asked a good question about what we teach our daughters, about what we accept. And that makes me think about what we teach our sons too. What we teach them about service, about sacrifice, about loving your country. She picked up the sixth folder, the thickest one yet. You say you love America. You say you love the troops. You say nobody supports veterans more than you. Her voice hardened. Let's find out if that's true. Patriotism questioned. Veterans and sacrifice. Trump rallied. The military veterans, this was solid ground. He'd given countless speeches about supporting the troops. I've done more for the military than any president in history, he declared. We rebuilt the entire armed forces. New equipment, better pay. We took care of our veterans like never before. He straightened, finding his footing again. I've done more for black veterans, Hispanic veterans, all veterans than anyone. More than any president except Lincoln. And that's only because of the you-know-what? He gestured dismissively at Crockett. She's never served. What does she know about the military? What does she know about sacrifice? Crockett's expression was unreadable. You're right, she said quietly. I've never served. I've never worn the uniform. I've never been shot at or bombed or had to watch friends die in combat. She paused. But I've also never called soldiers suckers and losers. So I suppose we're different that way. Trump exploded. I never said that. That is a complete fabrication. Fake news. The Atlantic magazine made it up. Let's start with something that isn't in dispute, Crockett interjected calmly. Something everyone can verify. July 18, 2015, the Family Leadership Summit in Iowa. The subject of Senator John McCain came up. She pulled out a tablet. Senator McCain served as a Navy pilot in Vietnam. His plane was shot down over Hanoi. He was captured. He spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war. He was beaten, starved, tortured so badly that he couldn't raise his arms above his head for the rest of his life. She looked at Trump. When his captors learned that his father was an admiral, they offered him early release, a propaganda victory for North Vietnam. He refused. Refused because other prisoners had been there longer. Refused because the military code said, you don't accept special privileges. He stayed in that prison for 3 more years because of honor. She pressed play on the tablet. Trump's own voice filled the studio, clear and unmistakable. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured. The clip ended. The silence that followed was absolute. That's not fake news, Crockett said. That's not out of context. That's you on camera telling America that a man who was tortured for 5 years isn't a real hero because he got captured. I like people that weren't captured. Trump started to respond, but Crockett kept going. Now let's talk about the Atlantic story. September 2020. Multiple sources, including 4-star generals, said you called fallen American soldiers losers and suckers. You denied it. You called it fake news. She pulled out another document. General John Kelly, your own chief of staff, a 4-star Marine general, a Gold Star father. His son Robert was killed in Afghanistan. She looked at Trump. General Kelly confirmed the story. He said you asked him while standing in Arlington National Cemetery. I don't get it. What was in it for them? Kelly is a liar. He's trying to sell books. General James Mattis, your Secretary of Defense. He said you were the first president in my lifetime who did not try to unite the American people. Mattis is a loser. General Mark Milley, your chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He called you fascist to the core. Milley is woke. These aren't Democrats, Mr. President. Crockett's voice was ice. These are generals, career military officers who served you, who stood beside you in the Oval Office, who watched you up close every single day. She set down the papers. Every single one of them says you're unfit to lead. Every single one. The men who know you best are the most terrified of you. Trump was gripping his podium, his knuckles white. A voice came from the back of the room, deep, weathered, the voice of someone who had seen things no one should ever see. "Mr. President, I'd like to say something." Bayer nodded. A man stood. He was perhaps 75, black, with close-cropped gray hair and the unmistakable bearing of career military. His jacket bore the insignia of the VFW and a Purple Heart pin. "My name is Raymond Thompson, Sergeant Major, United States Marine Corps, retired. 2 tours in Vietnam, 2 more in the Gulf." He paused. "My brother Marcus didn't make it home from Vietnam. He was 19 years old. He's buried in Arlington, Section 60. The room was absolutely still. "You said men like my brother were suckers. You said they were losers. You stood in a cemetery full of heroes and asked what was in it for them." His voice was steady, but there was something terrible underneath, something barely contained. "I voted for you in 2016, Mr. President. I believed you when you said you loved veterans. When you said you'd take care of us. When you said no one respected the military more than you." He shook his head slowly. "I was the sucker. The loser was anyone who believed you." He didn't sit down. He started walking toward the exit. And as he walked, other veterans stood one by one. 6 of them, removing their VFW caps, their Legion caps, holding them in their hands like they were holding something sacred. They followed Sergeant Major Thompson toward the door. One of them, a woman in a wheelchair with a folded flag in her lap, turned at the exit. She looked directly at Trump. "You're no commander-in-chief of mine." And they were gone. The studio was silent except for the sound of people crying. Crockett waited. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Those men and women fought for your right to lie about them. They buried friends. They carried flag-draped coffins. They woke up screaming from nightmares you can't imagine." She looked at Trump. "And you couldn't even visit their graves because it was raining, because you were worried about your hair." She closed the folder. "That's not patriotism, Mr. President. That's cowardice." The final blow, classified secrets and double standards. Trump was visibly shaken. His hands were trembling. His face had gone from red to something paler, almost gray. This whole thing is a setup," he stammered. "There is one more topic," Crockett said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "One more thing we need to discuss before we're done." She picked up the final folder. "You talk about law and order. You say you're the law and order president. Let's talk about how you treat the law when no one is watching." She opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of a bathroom, gold fixtures, expensive tile, and stacked on the floor next to the toilet were boxes marked with classification stamps. "Let's talk about where you keep America's secrets." Trump tried one last desperate pivot. "Law and order," he shouted, louder than necessary, like volume could make up for everything that had come before. "I'm the law and order president." He pointed at Crockett, finger trembling. "She's a public defender. She defends criminals, murderers, rapists. She helps them get out of jail." "I defended people," Crockett agreed calmly, "because that's what the Constitution requires. Everyone gets a defense. That's the law." She held up the photograph. "Let me show you what law and order looks like to you." The image appeared on the screen behind her, the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Boxes of classified documents stacked next to the toilet. "This is a bathroom at your private club, your residence. And these boxes contain some of the most sensitive secrets in American history: nuclear capabilities, military vulnerabilities, intelligence sources, the names of people who spied for America, whose lives depend on secrecy." She let that sink in. "You kept nuclear secrets next to your toilet. Not in a secure facility, not in a vault. Next to the toilet where your guests used the bathroom at parties, where staff came to clean, where anyone with a phone could have taken photographs." Trump started to interrupt. "That case was dismissed. Total vindication." "The case was dismissed because of how the special counsel was appointed," Crockett said. "Not because you were innocent. Not because you had a right to those documents. Not because what you did was legal." She pulled out another photograph, more boxes, this time stacked in a ballroom. "These were found in your ballroom, a room where you host weddings, where foreign nationals attend events, where you once brought guests to show them the cool stuff you had." "I declassified everything." "A president can declassify just by thinking." "You declassified nuclear secrets by thinking about it?" Crockett's voice was flat with disbelief. "That's your defense? That you have magical powers of declassification that work telepathically?" She held up a letter. "I have a letter signed by 47 former national security officials, Republicans and Democrats, explaining that no, that is absolutely not how any of this works." She set down the letter. "But let me tell you what really concerns me about this, Mr. President. It's not the legal technicalities. It's the double standard." She pulled out another document. reality winner, 25 years old, NSA contractor. In 2017, she leaked a single classified document about Russian election interference. One document she was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. Another, Daniel Hale, Air Force intelligence analyst, leaked documents about the drone program 4 years in federal prison. Another, Terry Alberry, FBI agent, leaked documents about surveillance 4 years. She looked at Trump. These people, all of them, leaked fewer documents than were found in your bathroom. Far less sensitive information. And they went to prison. Some of them are still there. She stepped closer to her podium. If a black woman from Texas had taken one classified document home and stored it in my bathroom, I would be in federal prison right now. I would not be standing on this stage. I would not be running for any office. I would be in a cell. Her voice hardened. You had 300 documents, nuclear secrets, military plans, and you're running for president. You're asking the American people to give you access to even more classified information. She looked directly at him. Tell me again about law and order. Tell me again about how the rules apply to everyone equally. The breaking point, the word that hung in the air. Trump was unraveling. His face had gone through every shade of red and was approaching purple. His breathing was audible through his microphone. This is a setup, he shouted. This whole thing from the beginning. He pointed at Crockett, his finger shaking. You're a nasty woman. You're nothing but a. He was losing control. Everyone could see it. This is what the Democrats do. They send people like. He stopped. Something had almost come out. A word. Everyone in the room knew what word. Crockett's voice was utterly calm. People like what, Mr. President? Your DEI hire? An affirmative action. Finish your sentence. People like me shouldn't even be finish it. He was panting now, his face contorted. The word was right there, pressing against his teeth, trying to escape. You're nothing but a. And he stopped. The word hung in the air, unsaid, but heard by everyone in the room, by everyone watching at home, by everyone who would see the clip in the hours and days to come. The silence stretched for an eternity. That's what I thought, Crockett said quietly. That's who you've always been. That's the word you use when you think no one is listening, the word that was in your mouth just now, that you almost couldn't stop yourself from saying. She gathered her folders. You called me low IQ. You called me affirmative action. You almost called me something else. And the only reason you didn't is because the cameras were on. Trump suddenly moved. He grabbed his microphone, ripped it off his lapel. I'm done, he screamed. This is disgusting. Fox News is dead to me. Dead. He stormed toward the stage exit. Eric and Don Jr. appeared from the wings, their faces masks of panic, reaching for their father. But his microphone wasn't completely dead. It picked up his voice as he walked away loud enough for everyone to hear. Get me out of here. She's making me look like just get me out. Crockett watched him go. Her voice carried across the studio, clear and calm. Mr. President. He paused at the edge of the stage. Some instinct made him turn. I didn't make you look like anything. I just showed people who you've always been. For one moment, their eyes met his, wild with rage and something that might have been fear. Her steady, unafraid, patient. Then he turned and fled. His sons caught up with him. The curtain swallowed them, and he was gone. Crockett stood alone on the stage. The audience sat in stunned silence. Bayer seemed frozen at his moderator's desk. Crockett looked at the camera. America deserves better than a man who runs from the truth. She turned to the audience. Half the seats were empty now, veterans who had walked out, supporters who couldn't watch anymore, people who suddenly needed air. Now, she said calmly, does anyone have questions? 30 hands went up. The aftermath, a nation awakens. The broadcast officially ended at 10:47 p.m. Eastern, 43 minutes ahead of schedule. By 11 p.m. the internet had already rendered its verdict in the way the internet does, with fire. She read him for filth hit #1 worldwide within 18 minutes. The clip of Trump storming off stage was viewed 23 million times before midnight. But it was the other clip that broke records, the moment of the almost word. The pause where everyone heard what he didn't say. That clip crossed 30 million views in 90 minutes. He almost said it trended at #2. What he almost called her had #3. Everyone knew. No one needed to say it. The word hung over the entire conversation like a mushroom cloud. Trump's Truth Social account erupted with a fury that crashed the platform's servers for nearly 3 hours. 11:17 p.m. Complete setup. Fox News is dead. Worse than CNN. 11:34 p.m. Crockett is a racist who hates white people. Everything she showed was fake. 11:52 p.m. The audience was planted by Democrats. Not one real American in the room. 12:09 a.m. I won the debate by leaving. Show strength. Everyone knows you walk away from ambushes. 12:31 a.m. Going to sleep now. Tomorrow we fight back, but everyone knows I won tonight. He posted 47 more times before dawn, each one more unhinged than the last. Each one carefully avoiding any specific refutation of anything Crockett had said. Just rage, just accusations. Just a 78-year-old man screaming into the void at 3 p.m. in the morning, undone by a black woman with folders and a smile. The morning shows were unanimous in a way that morning shows rarely are. CNN ran footage of the almost word moment on a loop with a cheer on. Trump nearly uses slur on live TV. MSNBC Joe Scarborough opened his show by playing the clip of the veterans walking out, then sat in silence for 30 seconds before saying, "I don't know what to add to that. I don't think I need to." Even Fox News seemed shell-shocked. Fox and Friends opened with their usual energy, but it felt forced, brittle. They played a heavily edited clip that cut most of Crockett's presentation and showed none of the almost word moment, but the damage was already done. Their viewers had seen it live. They couldn't unsee it. The poll numbers moved faster than anyone had seen in modern politics. Within 72 hours, Trump's support among voters over 65, down 8 points. Among veterans, down 11 points. Among white suburban women, down 12 points. Among independent voters, down 9 points. Overall favorability, down 7 points. Republican senators who had carefully avoided commenting on Trump began to distance themselves. 3 withdrew their endorsements entirely. 2 more issued statements calling for new leadership in the party. A donor retreat scheduled for Palm Beach was postponed indefinitely. Sources described crisis conversations about whether the campaign could recover from what was already being called the Fox News disaster. At a rally in Georgia the following week, Trump tried to address what had happened. That thing on Fox News, total setup. Complete and total setup. But you know what? I showed them. I showed them by leaving because that's what strong people do. They don't sit there and take abuse. They walk away. That's strength. The crowd cheered, but reporters noted that the cheer seemed thinner than usual. The arena was only 2/3 full. And when protesters outside held signs reading "Finish your sentence," several Trump supporters were photographed standing near them, looking conflicted. One image went viral. An elderly white man in a MAGA hat standing next to a protester's sign that read, "We heard what you almost said." He was crying. Jasmine Crockett returned to Congress 3 days after the broadcast. She did not give interviews. She did not appear on talk shows. She did not write op-eds or post victory laps on social media. When a reporter caught her in a Capitol hallway and asked for comment, she said only, "I'm a public servant. I have work to do." "Do you feel like you won?" the reporter pressed. Crockett paused. This was never about winning. It was about truth. The American people saw the truth. What they do with it is up to them. What about the moment when he stopped himself? "I know what word was in his mouth," Crockett said. Every black person watching knew. And now every white person watching knows too. Maybe that's worth something. Maybe now we can have an honest conversation about who this man really is. She started to walk away, then turned back. He called me low IQ. He called me affirmative action. He wanted to call me something else. The only reason he didn't is because millions of people were watching. She straightened her jacket. But here's the thing about that word, it doesn't hurt me. It reveals him. And now the whole country knows exactly who they're dealing with. She walked into her office and closed the door. The sign on the door read, "Jasmine Crockett, DTX." Underneath, someone had taped a new edition, "She Who Must Not Be Debated." Ripples of change, grassroots movements, and personal reckonings. Patricia Fielding started a Facebook group the morning after the broadcast. She called it Grandmothers Against Trump. Within 1 week, it had 47,000 members. By the end of the month, it swelled to over 200,000, with chapters forming in swing states. Members shared stories of their own awakenings, grandmothers who had voted Republican their whole lives, now organizing voter registration drives and hosting town halls. One viral post read, "We raised our children to respect women, honor veterans, and tell the truth. It's time we hold our leaders to the same standard." Sergeant Major Raymond Thompson was invited to speak at the Democratic National Convention. He declined the invitation, saying he wasn't political. Instead, he visited his brother's grave at Arlington and stood there for 2 hours. A photographer captured the moment. Thompson in his dress uniform, hand on the headstone, head bowed. The photograph became one of the most shared images of the year, symbolizing quiet dignity in the face of betrayal. Veterans organizations across the country reported a surge in membership and activism, with many launching campaigns to support candidates who truly honor service. 3 weeks after the broadcast, Trump held a press conference. A reporter asked about the Fox News incident. Trump's face went pale. He gripped the podium. For 3 long seconds, he said nothing. Then, next question. He never spoke about it again publicly. But sources inside his campaign described him as obsessed, unable to let it go, watching the clips over and over, demanding to know how she got all that information, threatening lawsuits that never materialized. They said he couldn't say Crockett's name anymore, would only refer to her as that woman or the one from Texas. They said sometimes, late at night, he would mutter about the word she made me, almost say as if she had somehow forced it to the surface, as if she had reached into his brain and pulled out the truth. Maybe she had. Maybe all she'd done was stand there with folders and facts and unshakable calm and let him destroy himself. Maybe that was enough. In living rooms across America, in diners and churches and VFW halls, people were still talking about it weeks later. The night Donald Trump ran from a woman with documents. The night he almost said the word. The night the mask finally slipped. Some of them, more than anyone expected, were starting to think that maybe they had been wrong about a lot of things for a very long time. And in her office in the Rayburn building, Jasmine Crockett sat at her desk, highlighter in hand, reviewing another stack of documents. Her assistant knocked. "Congresswoman, you have a call." "It's CNN. They want to know if you'll debate him again." Crockett smiled, not a kind smile. The smile of someone who knows exactly how the game is played. "Tell them I'm available, but only if he's willing to finish his sentence this time." She went back to her documents. There was always more work to do. Extended reflections. What this means for America. In the months that followed, the Fox News disaster became a turning point in American political discourse. Historians would later compare it to the Nixon-Kennedy debates of 1960, where image and substance collided in real time. But this was different. This was raw, unfiltered truth piercing through years of spin. Political analysts dissected every moment. The folders as symbols of preparation versus bluster, the audience interventions as organic reckonings, the almost word as a revelation of underlying biases. Grassroots movements flourished. Folders for Truth, a nonpartisan group, encouraged citizens to research and document facts about candidates, hosting workshops on public records and accountability. Women's groups launched Respect Starts Here campaigns, sharing stories of everyday disrespect and linking them to national leadership. Veterans formed Honor Over Politics, advocating for policies that truly support service members, regardless of party. Even within the Republican Party, cracks widened. Younger leaders emerged, calling for a return to principled conservatism without the personal baggage. One senator, in a bold op-ed, wrote, "We cannot build a future on denial. The night on Fox showed us who we are and who we must not be." For Crockett, the event propelled her into a new stratosphere of influence. Bills she sponsored on workers' rights and veterans' care gained bipartisan support. She became a mentor to young lawyers, emphasizing, "Facts are your best weapon. Use them wisely." As for Trump, the obsession lingered. In private, aides reported him replaying the debate, pausing at the almost word moment, whispering, "I almost," but publicly, he pivoted to new battles, though the shadow loomed. This fictional tale reminds us that truth, when wielded with patience and evidence, can shift narratives. It highlights themes of accountability, respect, and equality, values central to a healthy democracy. If it sparks hope, anger, or satisfaction, share it with someone who needs to feel it too. And in the comments, what would you have said to him in that moment? How can we all hold leaders to higher standards?